Okay, so we are going to start off Unit 2 in Pre-Algebra content. Today we're going to go over Day 1, multiples and factors. So the first part, we have our vocabulary. Today we're going to go over what a multiple is, and a multiple is the product of one whole number and any other whole number. So it doesn't matter what we're multiplying it by. Two numbers, when they're multiplied together, would result in a multiple. An example of how we do that is, let's go over this one. The first 6 multiples of 3 are, so to find those, we are going to take 3 times 1, 3 times 2, 3 times 3, 3 times 4, 3 times 5, and 3 times 6. That is going to give us the first 6 multiples of 3. And for that, we would get 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, and 18. And when we list those out, we're going to just list them out separated by a comma. So 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, and then 18. And that would be our multiples of 3. Now, there are infinite number of multiples, so typically you'd just be asked to list out a few of them like this. All right, so for example 1, go ahead and fill in the first 6 multiples of the following numbers. And if you want to show your work on a scratch paper, you can show your work like we did on the previous slide, or you can just use your skip counting to get the first 6. Okay, so hopefully you did that, and here you can check your answers for 2. You want to make sure you include the number itself because that is the very first multiple. So we would have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, oops, that's not a 10, and then 12. Then for number 4, we would have 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, and then 24. Awesome. And for 6, hopefully you have that one. You have, starting off with 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, and 36. Then for 8, we would have 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 48. All right, so that is what it's asking when it wants you to list out the multiples of specific numbers. All right, so the reason that multiples are going to come in handy is because we are going to need least common multiples, and this helps a lot in higher level math or even with basic math with adding and subtracting fractions. So we are going to master this first before we move on to fractions. This one is the least common multiple, LCM, and that's how you're going to see it abbreviated most of the time. And this is the smallest multiple that is shared between a group of numbers. So an example, we're going to find the LCM of 4 and 6. To do this, you might know it off the top of your head, but we are going to start listing out a few multiples of each of those. So typically I start with the largest number, and I keep going until I find one I know is divisible by the other one. So for this, we would have 6. 4 does not go into 6. And then we have 12. And off the top of my head, I know that 4 goes into 12. But if you didn't know that, you could start listing out multiples of 4 until you see that you have one in common. Now, there are going to be an infinite number of multiples that 2 numbers have in common. The important thing is that this one you are finding the least or the lowest, because if we kept going, I know 6 goes into 18 and then 24, and eventually 4 would go into 24 as well, but that is not going to be the lowest one possible, and we only want the lowest for this answer. So even though they both have a 24 in common, we are not going to use that as our answer. All right. So for next, we're going to find the lowest common multiple below. So we already listed out the multiples of 2, 4, 6, and 8, and we're going to use those to find the lowest common multiple for different pairs. To start, we're going to do 2 and 4. And if we look, the lowest number that those have in common is 4. And it is okay for the LCM, or lowest common multiple, to be one of those numbers. So even though 4 was one of our starting numbers, it's okay that that is our answer. Then next, LCM of 8 and 4. If we look, 8 and 4 both go into 8. So again, that would be our LCM. And then next, we have the LCM of 6 and 8. And if we look, it looks like the smallest number that 6 and 8 have in common between their multiples is going to be 24. So sometimes it helps to make a list. Other times you can mentally count, skip count, and figure out which number that they're going to have in common that's the lowest. So whichever method works the best for you. Okay, so I want you to go ahead and pause the video and find the LCM of 3 and 5. All right, so for this, I start with the largest number, so I'd have 5, 10, and I know 3 does not go into either of those, and then I have 15. And if I'm remembering correctly, 3 does go into 15. So if I want to check that, we have 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. So it does, in fact, go into 15. So that is going to be our LCM of 3 and 5. All right. Now, for this one, they want you to find the LCM of 6 and 9. So if you want to pause the video and try this one on your own as well, then we can go over the answer. Okay. So I'm going to start again with my largest number, 9, and start counting by that. So if I have 9, I would have 9, 18, and I'm pretty sure 6 goes into 18. So if you wanted to check that, you could list out your 6's by 6, 12, 18. And that shows us right away that we have those in common. And that makes our answer 18 for our LCM. Okay, so if you have questions on that, make sure you ask before you move on to this next part. Okay, next we have factors. For this,